One of these days, something will happen with all this mop of mine.
And we are up and running. Hey, we're live, everybody.
Yay!
We are on the internet live.
Excellent.
Yes, that is excellent. And it went off without a hitch this time. It just kind of started.
Which is nice for a change.
I didn't have my usual 3 minutes of intense sweating and heart beating out of my chest.
Except for I just got here a minute and a half ago.
That's true. Yeah, Thomas decided to roll in right at the last minute just to try and get me worked up, and it was pretty effective. Yeah, it did work. I was nervously pacing around my living room going, but he's here, so that's good. Everyone can hear us and see us. I imagine. Give us a quick yes would be ideal.
Catfish whiskers.
Nice. Josh, everyone, by the way, we do have, assuming you can hear us and see us.
Hey, glitchy mantis.
Awesome, Josh. We do have Josh with us again in the chat section. Josh is another one of our video hosts and aquatics enthusiasts.
Yes. I love it.
He's in the chat with us to also answer any questions we aren't able to get to. I think he's actually been answering questions for the last half an hour. I think he's been up there doing that. So
awesome.
Yeah, we're covered from all angles. So before we actually get into any of the questions, I did really, really want to go into the details of a contest that just got wrapped up. The Fluval Nano Reef Photo Contest.
Awesome.
So this is something that we had going for the last couple months. We asked people to submit their photos of their nano reefs, and by doing so, they were entered into a chance to win a Fluval C Evo 13.5 gallon nano reef aquarium.
With a bunch of upgraded stuff.
Yeah, that was the grand prize. Was the Fluval, and you saw Josh's series on the Evo.
Yeah. The ever-evolving Evo.
The ever-evolving Evo Project Evolution. And so our grand prize was the Evo plus all the upgrades that Josh had made in his modification video.
Nice.
Second prize was the Orbit Marine, the light we used for it, the Current USA.
Awesome. Orbit Marine Pro or whatever?
Yeah, that's right. And then the third prize was a $50 e-gift card. So we
spend it on what you want.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I love to do. I love to be able to take the money and just get whatever I want. Treat yourself.
Yeah. I like it.
That's my jam. So we did pick the winners. The winners were picked, I believe, earlier this week or late last week. So I just wanted to quickly go over them, and you haven't seen them yet.
I have not.
So I thought maybe we'll bring them up on the screen for all of our lovely viewers. And then you can kind of give me your thoughts on the winners.
Sure.
So we will start
Put me on the spot, why don't you?
Yeah, it's,
as if this live stream didn't do that enough.
Yeah, that's kind of my favorite part really is watching you squirm. All right, so we'll put on the third place first. We'll start. Yeah, we'll go in reverse order.
Cool.
So third place. Let me just switch it here so all of our lovely viewers can see it. That's third place, so they can see that now. And here we are.
Okay.
From Greg H.
Oh, nice. So this is This is a small all-in-one. It looks almost like maybe a BioCube 8-gallon or something. We got some chromis in there, schooling around. I mean, it's a little tight for chromis, but they look happy. Bunch of snails, some red discus soma. Flame scallop. I'm going to be honest, flame scallops are tough to keep alive long-term. So the funny thing is they look really cool, and they always attract newer hobbyists, and people buy them, not realizing that they will essentially starve to death unless you feed the bejesus out of them with filter feeding foods, which can be difficult. Not impossible,
right? But
definitely difficult. But you know what? I like the scape. It looks like it's really coming along. It could stand to use a few more corals, but all in good time. It looks like Greg H is off to a fantastic start, and I'm sure they are going to only become more and more addicted. And with $50 extra to spend on their tank, get all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
I would put that towards, I don't see another power head in this tank, so I would put that towards a KPS. Akamai KPS.
That's fair. Yeah, which actually came the first place winner got a KPS in the whole bundle, and
they're lucky.
They are lucky.
The KPS I love. So
and Greg, I believe this was a community voter. Like the community voted on who won the third place prize.
Nice.
It was up on our social and whatnot, and people got to vote. So Greg got that one. Let's move on to second place in this Nano Reef contest.
Oh, I'm excited.
Let's see
what's
this
next?
one. Next is from Costa V. That's his.
Wow.
Now that thing that looks awesome.
Oh, that again. It's obvious that this is a very tight tank. I wouldn't be surprised if this tank wasn't even past 10 gallons. It's probably even less. But that's awesome. We've got some SPS corals in there. Looks like some Monteporas, some Ooh. Acanthostria in there. It looks like we've got an anemone of some kind. Down at the bottom. Wow. Zoanthids everywhere, flower pot coral, a couple of euphyllias like an octobubble and a branching hammer, it looks like. A very well composed little tank too.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of color going on. We've got, green cupping Montipora corals tucked in with a purple one in the middle, and then up in the corner there's another one that looks like it might be an orange polyp. Just really well put together.
Really,
impressive.
Really cool. Yeah, no,
Very
I mean,
impressive.
This is one of those aquariums that, you want your aquarium to be nice to look at. You want it to be absolutely beautiful. And this, I look at it, I think I could look at that for hours.
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing is? Costa, I'm assuming it's a he. It might be a she. I don't really know. But he, she, they did a really good job. And I'm sure that their biggest problem is going to be trimming coral soon, because that's not a lot of space for coral. So you need more tank or scissors.
Yeah, that's true. And
not actual scissors.
But now they're equipped with that new light, so that's pretty cool too.
That's excellent.
That is excellent. And now we'll move on to first place.
First place.
Our grand prize winner.
Let's take a look.
This guy is Austin H.
I'm excited.
That's his right there.
Very nice. Very, very nice. So definitely got some really cool euphyllias. There's it looks like 3 different hammer corals in the bottom left-hand corner of the tank. Maybe like a gold hammer, like what some people call a toxic green or a green tip hammer, and then a green hammer with purple tips. Really nice. Got some brain corals in there. A nice collection of brains. I'm always. I like it when people do that, where you've got a few of the same coral in different color varieties, and you kind of stick them together to make little separate gardens of corals. It's a nice way to collect coral, which is a very addictive thing that happens. Josh and I fall victim to that on a regular basis. But it's a cool way to collect corals and still display them in a way that comes across a little bit more natural or is well composed, as opposed to just having what some people do, and that's like a shallow tank and then just filling it with different frags of stuff and just having it. And it's less about the aquascape and more about just having a collection of corals.
Right.
I like that this is a happy medium between the two. I love that it's 2 separate islands. Rule of thirds going on big time. We've got a nice big chunky island on the left and a smaller one on the right. We've got some SPS in there. This tank obviously has more filling in to do than the other tank did, than second place, but the potential of this tank by Austin is fantastic. Good job, Austin.
Yeah, man. If you're watching, we'd love to see follow-ups of this guy.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
In the future, definitely follow up and show us the growth, the progress, because it looks like he's in a very good spot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's got a nice pump on there too. Vortec, probably an MP10 based on the size of the tank. Might be an MP40, but I'm gonna guess it's an MP10. Very nice setup.
Cool.
Well done.
Awesome.
Well done. Very impressed.
Very well done indeed. So we'll bring it back to us. Hey, here we are. So we're going to get into questions now, because that is the whole point of why we're actually here. Yeah, do a Q&A. We're gonna A some Qs. All right. So I have to actually start looking at what you guys are asking. I'm going to start off with the most recent one, and I'll work my way back while Thomas chats it up with you.
Yeah, tries to.
So I've got a question for you. Bulkhead fittings I've installed with rubber seal inside, and it drips. I tried getting it tighter, but still I've stripped and redone. Still drips. What would you suggest?
Okay, so typically, if you have a bulkhead, when you install it, the gasket does go on the inside of the aquarium, so that the flat end of the bulkhead goes on there, and then the stem of the bulkhead and then the nut is on the outside of the tank, and there's no gasket on that side unless you were given 2 gaskets. Some of them come with a pair of gaskets, and you can place them like that if you care to. If you can't hand tighten it and stop the drip, and there's still a drip, either the gasket's got a defect in it somewhere. Sometimes it looks like in the rubber you can see almost like a little worming or like a line that's kind of permanently creased into the rubber where it didn't fill the mold properly. That's a potential issue, in which case you just need a new gasket. The bulkhead itself could be cracked somewhere, which can cause a drip. It's no good if the bulkhead itself down the inside of the bulkhead isn't completely intact. Having a gasket there won't help anything, because you're going to get dripping through the plastic of the bulkhead itself. And if you can't see anything there, then I would then look at the hole that was drilled through the tank. Sometimes what happens is you pick a drill bit that's too large or a hole saw that's too large just by a hair, and then the gasket can never make a complete seal on it, that would be an issue. But more commonly, you get shell chipping. And what shell chipping is you're looking at the hole, it'll look like there's little circular chips that have popped out around the hole that can allow water to leak through. And if a shell chip is large enough, it can actually prevent the gasket from making a proper seal. And that could potentially leak regardless of what you do. So I would start with trying a different bulkhead just in hopes that the bulkhead itself is the problem. And if that doesn't fix the issue, you may have an issue with the actual hole that was drilled in the tank, which is a much harder problem to fix, but not impossible. The two options you kind of have are trying to drill out a larger hole and use a larger bulkhead and then neck it down, or use inserts to bring it down to the right size that you wanted in the first place, or a new tank.
Fair enough. How to lower young angelfish aggression. It was okay at first, but then its partner died, and then I added some red-eye tetras to the tank, and one, it's cornering them. He has settled down a little now.
I find that angels don't typically care too much about other smaller fish in the tank with them, unless they see them as food items, which is a problem I had, which I've mentioned in the past, where I had adult angels and I had them added to a tank that had black neon tetras. And although those tetras were far too large for those angels to actually eat, they constantly hunted them and would try to eat them and kill them in the process, because they snap them jaws quick and mess up those little fish. In which case, my only solution in my instance was to remove one or the other. And in that case, it was a lot easier to catch a couple of giant angels than a barrage of neons. So I ended up moving the angels to a different system and left them there. If the aggression has slowed down or stopped, if it is just aggression, then I wouldn't worry too much about it at this point. However, if it is a predatory response, you're kind of stuck. You have to kind of pick one or the other. Either you get rid of the smaller fish and put larger fish in with the angel, or you remove the angel, put the angel in a different system, or trade it in and start with new, smaller angels and go from there. I know it's not a great answer necessarily, because you never want to kind of give up a fish that you've invested a lot emotionally in, but sometimes that's going to be your best bet, either getting them a separate facility or getting the smaller fish a separate facility. And
all right. Well, what are the best foods for fishes for faster growth and color enhancement?
Most color enhancing foods will say that they're color enhancing right on them, and a lot of growth foods will do the exact same. But I will say, typically, I use higher protein content foods for predatory fish or fish that are omnivorous to increase growth rate. I stay away from anything personally that has hormones in it, because I don't want to get temporary coloration or I don't want to rush growth. Like the whole idea is you want a fish to have everything they need to grow at a speed that is completely natural without it being slowed down or sped up too much. You don't want to throw them into a rapid growth state that they don't necessarily or wouldn't necessarily be in normally, because that could have adverse side effects. And at the same time, you don't want to starve them and slow down their growth rate, because that's just not good for them either. So you just want to look for a well-balanced food that's going to be high in protein for fish that are omnivorous or predatory, or high in plant protein if they are a fish that is herbivorous, because you don't want to mess up their guts by throwing a bunch of animal protein into a fish that isn't used to digesting that stuff. A lot of foods will have things like carotenoids in them, which are color enhancers for reds and yellows and stuff like that. So like I said, as long as it's not hormone-based food, then you're good. That's my personal opinion. Lots of people use foods with hormones in them. I'm just not one of them.
Opinions are like belly buttons.
Yeah, everybody's got one of those.
Okay, on the topic of food, someone asks, food for fishes like parrotfish, discus?
There's lots. If you want specific foods, Tropical, which is a company based in Poland, I believe, does a whole whackload of really good foods, and they do have some, I believe, that are specific to parrotfish, growth and color, and then also for discus, for a whole bunch of different things. Hikari is another really great brand if you're looking for discus food. I know there's lots of different discus foods out there that you can try. There's some more obscure things that you won't really find everywhere that you might find at some specialty places. Tropical is kind of like one of those foods. It's not everybody has it, but it is actually a really decent food product. Most people have Hikari, which I think is a great brand overall. People also, from time to time, I believe, do frozen foods. I've never kept discus. We've talked about this about a bajillion times.
Yeah, that's a recurring topic.
But I am planning to get discus and go down that road so that I can better serve you, because lots of people ask discus questions. I think also frozen bloodworms from higher end brands and stuff can also be a good option for discus if memory serves. Yes, I'm generally of the opinion that I will find a brand that I trust, or that lots of people trust, or lots of people have results with, positive results, obviously. And then I will kind of find the foods that they have for specific fish and then try feeding those. Usually goes over quite well. Every once in a while you run into a snag and you kind of have to convince fish to eat new foods. Sometimes they get stuck on things they like and don't want to try things that are new, even if it's going to be better for them.
Sounds like having kids. Sounds like just like
Sounds like having kids, or like having dogs, or like having anything that takes up your time and frustrates the hell out of you.
Do male angelfish lose fertilization after numerous spawning? My pair recently are having trouble. All white, dead eggs, and they get eaten.
I've never heard of that. So I'm going to say probably not. However, just because I've never heard of it doesn't mean it's not possible. So I'm probably going to say either if it's an older pair and this is just happening, maybe they are just getting over the hill or something. But if this is a pair of angelfish that you've had that have started spawning, more recently, and they're kind of hit and miss on it, they could just be getting the swing of it, getting into the swing of it and getting used to spawning. You could also have a situation where you're getting fungus on the eggs, like they're not being taken care of properly. So instead of developing, they're just rotting, which can happen. We actually had a pair of angels, I think, in the office at one point that were spawning regularly, but the eggs were also regularly, they'd start developing and then go white from fungus and not make it, or bacteria, one or the other. But yeah, I've never heard of that. Josh may know better.
I think Josh also said he wasn't quite sure.
Fair enough.
But I think it's
support team.
But I think if you guys haven't heard of it, it must not be super common.
Yeah, if it is possible, it's definitely not common. Like, obviously, all animals, when they hit a certain point in their lives, they're either going to be less effective reproducing, stop reproducing altogether, or there are species that will reproduce until they physically die.
Right. Fair enough.
Roosters.
How many again do you have?
Roosters? At this point? Oh, God.
Because you said you didn't want roosters. You told me that you wanted as few as possible.
I've got 40 birds now. And I would say 15 or so are roosters. And I only want to keep 2 or 3 of them. One of them keeps attacking me. And I've put that guy in his place a few times. And he just keeps going at it. He's going to turn into a...
He wants to be the head of the household. He sees what you're doing. He's like, no, I got
He's going to be filled with stuffing soon. Is what he's going to be.
Do they do the stereotypical rooster thing, 5 in the crow?
Cockadoodle do? Yeah, but the barn's a good 60 or 70 feet away from the house.
Oh, so it's not...
so it's not that
doesn't
bad.
Disturb you?
No, and our bedroom's on the other end of the house too. So we've got a whole bunch of house and then a whole bunch of... And then they're in the barn until I actually let them out.
Fantastic. That's probably smart.
But my neighbors aren't so lucky. They're right across from the
barn. What happens if you overstock a tank?
Most commonly... especially if you do it quickly, you're going to just end up with in a position where the amount of waste being produced by the fish exceeds the amount of biological filtration that your filtration is capable of providing. So in that situation, you end up with ammonia. So there's too much ammonia for the bacteria that your tank is currently and filter are currently able to harbor to break down into nitrate, and therefore you start getting elevated ammonia levels plus high nitrates because they're going to be working as hard as they can to process whatever ammonia is in the water. So then you just end up with this kind of dual whammy, terrible situation. The other option is, let's say that doesn't happen and your tank is still overstocked. You could end up in a situation where fish become overly aggressive because there is no room and there's not enough competition, or there's too much competition for food and stuff that's available. So you either have failure to thrive because not enough fish are getting the food they need, or a ton of aggression because fish are literally shoulder to shoulder, although that can go both ways. You can also end up in situations where, like cichlids, the more fish you have in the tank, the less likely the aggression in the aquarium is going to hurt any one particular fish. So, but your biggest issue is the water quality. You end up doing a ton of maintenance and potentially never catching up with it. Oh, stunting growth is another potential issue. If you get fish that should be able to use like the full size of that tank, but that tank's so jammed full of fish that they feel like they are shoulder to shoulder, so to speak, that can slow down growth. That kind of falls into my like failure to thrive situation where things just aren't going as well as they should because they don't have optimal living conditions. Yes, I'm done.
Awesome. I'm getting some brown algae building up on the surfaces of my decorations in my 40-gallon freshwater. How is it best to remove this?
Just like gently scrub it off with a soft bristle brush or algae pad, or just nothing abrasive, because you don't want to mess up the paint or anything that are on your ornaments. But yeah, just manual removal is the easiest way to get rid of that brown film algae. It's totally normal. It happens.
Seems a bit tedious, but
it is a little tedious.
What can you do? Yeah.
You can try putting some algae eating fish in to kind of help, or snails that might help. The only thing is adding fish to correct that kind of a problem just means you also have that fish to take care of thereafter.
Right.
So you end up having
just
to feed a new food.
And all that.
Well, potentially, right? It could be potentially that. You could also just double check your lighting schedule. Although it's green algae, you usually end up with a mass amount of if you have your lights on too long. But 6 hours a day for the 6 hours that you're home to enjoy the tank is an awesome period of time. No light from windows and stuff will also help. Direct sunlight. Indirect sunlight's not that bad, but direct sunlight.
It's a no-go.
Yeah, that's no-go.
Cool. Would you ever use organic soil in your tank?
I don't like using soil. I find it extremely messy. So no, I won't. Probably not. Maybe I should.
Give it a shot.
Here's the thing. Like, I have my opinions based on experience. And
got really bright suddenly.
Yeah,
I'll be right back. I have to
Brian will come back. No problem. Just because I don't like doing something or haven't enjoyed doing it in the past is usually why I don't do it again in the future. However, I will say that I've seen a ton of really nice tanks that use dirt. So dirt bottom or soil or organic or otherwise. So I might try it again in the future. I just really hate the idea. Like, I also don't like using sand very much for the exact same reason, but dirt is even worse for that. It can kick up and make a really big mess. So you got to be delicate with it, and I don't like to have to be delicate. So, but maybe I'll do a dirt bottom tank in the future just to do it, since it's been brought up a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
I know it's one popular way to do a substrate for a planted aquarium, so I might go down that road at some point. But I really prefer to use things that are heavier, even pelletized soils like the Tropica stuff, or I think it's Fluval Samurai soil or whatever they use for their shrimp tanks. It's pelleted, so it looks more like and acts more like a gravel, but over time will kind of come apart and end up just being soil.
Right.
But easier to use to start, in my opinion. But, yep.
Cool. Next one. Who's the Amish guy?
I don't know, Brian. Learn to shave. Get a haircut. What's wrong with you? Yeah. I like... Okay, here's the truth. I've always wanted to grow my hair out, and I've never made it all the way. Like, the last time I tried to do this, I ended up going the... What would you call it?
Mountain man?
Not even.
That's how I saw
hipster.
it.
It was like a hipster.
Oh, well,
yes,
no, once you started, the first couple videos, you look like you walked down from the mountains after a 17-year vow of silence, meditating. That's what you look like the very first.
My hair was actually longer than this.
It was long,
Not a lot longer, but it was longer.
The beard was down to here, and you were pretty scruffy. But then you kind of started shaving it up,
Right. So I did the man ponytail thing, short one. That wasn't a man bun, but it was close. Yeah. And had the sides shaved and either slicked it back or had it up or whatever, and trimmed the sides of my beard. And my beard was massive back then, so I looked like a hipster. But the point is, I didn't follow through. I didn't grow my hair out. I want shoulder length or just past shoulder length hair. I want to be able to, listen to some Metallica
and just let loose
and wave it around. You know what I mean? And I've never gotten there, so I've kind of decided I'm 32. So I think if I don't do this soon, I'm probably not going to do it.
I know, you're getting old, man.
So I'm going to give it a shot. I'm trying to be patient with it. That's why I kind of look all weird. But we'll see what happens. I might get bored again and end up looking like Brian and not too long.
See, I do that too. I tend to go back and forth. I grow the beard or grow the hair and then trim it up. Anyway.
The beard could use a trim. It's a little puffy right now, but...
Anyway, back to fish.
Yay!
A shrimp. More specifically, is it tricky to keep mantis shrimp, and how thick does the glass need to be?
It's not tricky, and for all the... Here's the thing. I've heard tons and tons and tons about how mantis shrimp can break tanks, and I don't actually doubt that it's possible that they could, but unless you're keeping it in like a 5-gallon tank or maybe a 10-gallon tank where the glass is like extremely thin, I really don't think you're gonna have an issue. Definitely not. I really don't think with spearers, but if you're talking peacock mantises, the larger smashers, I would say realistically, if you've got a 40 or 50-gallon tank, the glass should be thick enough that they're not going to go around smashing through it. I know it says they have the acceleration of a .22 caliber bullet, but that's the acceleration, not the density, not the stopping power. It's not like shooting the tank. So I've never heard of anyone that I've known who's kept mantis shrimp ever have one break a tank. Not to say it's never happened. But I think it's a lot more uncommon than it's led, like people are led to believe.
I think we need to set up like a Mythbusters type episode where we
and just irritate a mantis until it
punches the glass and just
starts taking cracks at the glass.
And then we'll know.
We could. I mean, the mantis is unlikely to get hurt. The rest of us standing on the other side of the tank when the water and glass comes flying at us.
Well, it's Mythbusters. They would always stand behind some protective barrier. We could do that too.
What's the fun in that?
That's true. We'll look into that.
But yeah, I think if you've got the better part of a 1/4 inch of glass or more, I really can't see it. I don't know. I don't think it's going to go through.
Okay, cool. Hi, my aquarium is heavily planted, and I noticed if I dose fertilizer according to recommended fertilizer label, it looks like they are not healthy, and I use about 30% more to try and make them look healthier, I'm assuming. Any suggestions or recommendations?
Okay, so if I'm understanding, where is this? Let me just read this again quickly.
So they do it based on the recommendations, but then the plants don't look healthy. So they're adding more to it to try and compensate for what they think is unhealthy look of the plants.
Here's the thing. This is very... plants can have different responses or different appearances based on what they are lacking in nutrition or in terms of fertilization or CO2, etc. So it's hard to say for sure what your plant's missing, like why it doesn't look good. That's very general. Like the whole question is very, very general, and it gets a little bit more complex than that. Like certain types of yellowing the leaves could indicate a lack of iron, and they require more iron specifically. And general lack of growth and development of algae in the tank could mean you have high lighting, you could have higher fertilizer and not enough CO2, and therefore they're unable to grow effectively. They could have everything else they need, but just not enough CO2, which is why they're, stuck. And essentially algae is now taking over and they're not really developing. So there's lots of things that could indicate that something very specific needs to be supplemented rather than a general fertilizer. So what I would do, and there's a whole bunch of them out there, you can look up, we gotta make our own, but there's charts you can find that shows different leaf ailments. So things that could be happening to a leaf specifically and what it's gonna look like and what that look of the leaf would essentially equate to a lack of. So it could be a lack of magnesium or potassium or whatever, nitrogen. And that will give you a better idea of what you need to supplement. You can also actually, this would be really good for our support team. We have a couple of really good plant guys on our support team. So I would say take some pictures of your plants, of the leaves specifically as well. So like a general look at the tank and what it's looking like. And then the leaves that look the worst, let's say, so they can have a look and they may be able to point you in the right direction for what fertilizer specifically you require, rather than using a general purpose fertilizer over and over or upping that. Because what you could do by just dosing more and more of a general fertilizer is raise other things that don't need to be raised. And that can cause its own problems. So yeah, we got to drill it down. It's a common question, but it's one of those questions you can't generalize. I can't give you a general answer. We have to figure out what the issue is and then kind of go from there into what is going to fix it specifically.
Right. So I've dropped the email address to our support team. So again, as we always mention, if you have a very specific question based on an ailing fish or plant or whatever, something that needs more context, make sure you contact our support team and they can support you.
Yeah, I really want to see everybody. The key thing is I really want everybody's problems or questions to be addressed and for you to have success. I don't want to only generalize and be like, good luck. So our support team's there to kind of follow through on anything that actually requires a good conversation and make sure you get where you want to be, and we get your tank or your fish or your plants or whatever where you want them to be.
Absolutely. And I'll take this time to mention as well, I saw someone ask for our React series that we've been doing. We have, again, a whole ton of pictures that have come in, hundreds. But if you do want yours to be featured in one of our videos, I've thrown my email address in there as well, brian@bigowls.com. Send them straight to me, and then I will show them to this guy, and we'll have lots of fun with it. So you can do that. I've put the email address in the chat. Moving on to, do I need an air pump for freshwater shrimp and neon tetras?
If you have a filter on the aquarium, the answer is technically no. So what an air pump is going to do for you is provide surface agitation for oxygenation. So bubbles traveling through water do very little to oxygenate the water. What's actually doing most of the oxygenation or gas exchange is the breaking of the surface of the water where the bubbles are popping. So that disturbing of the surface of the water allows for oxygen from the atmosphere to come into the aquarium and carbon dioxide to leave. So if you have a power filter on your tank circulating water and it's rippling the surface of the water, it's already doing that for you. So the short answer is no. The long answer is, if you like the way it looks, you can do whatever you like. I've never heard of a bubbler hurting shrimp or anything like that. So I can't see a scenario in which using a air pump in your aquarium with tetras and shrimp is going to be a bad thing, unless you have aquarium plants that you are trying to grow as well, because that extra gas exchange is going to dissipate CO2 from the water and introduce oxygen, and plants can very much do that on their own by absorbing CO2 and releasing oxygen. So you could be stunting their growth if you have plants. But I would also say a lot of people will run air pumps on their planted aquariums at night, because plants will essentially kind of work in reverse in the evening when there's no light. So having extra oxygen in the water isn't necessarily a bad thing. Again, your filters are going to do most of it anyways. But if you like air pumps, I ain't going to stop you.
Go nuts.
Yeah.
Cool. What gravel would you recommend to make my tank look like ocean bottom? I don't want to do sand.
Okay, so my favorite is Carib Sea Reef Grade Aragonite. It looks similar to sand, especially from a distance. However, it is a much larger grain than sand, and therefore doesn't kick up in the same way sand does. I think Brian's looking for it right now. I'm just going to make sure he grabs the special grade reef sand. There you go.
This one here?
Yep.
Sweet. All right, I'm going to link that for you guys in the chat so you guys can see what he's talking about.
I think it's the special grade.
Come on.
I just want to make sure we grab the right one here for you, because there's also Reef Aragonite Sand, Super Reef Aragonite. Where is it? Yeah, that's the beast. That's it. It doesn't have to be Aragalive. It could be the other one. I do actually really like the Aragalive as well.
On sale. Cool.
Sweet. Yeah, so it doesn't kick up like sand, but it is a nice ivory color or white color, especially if you're using reef lighting. And it doesn't kick up like sand, but it has the appearance thereof. So it's a super popular choice. My favorite is probably Fiji Pink, but I'll be honest, that does have some grain sizes that go down to, I think, 0.5 millimeters, which may as well be sand. Like it's not sugar sand, but it's darn close. So this is probably your best bet.
Cool. Linked in the chat for you guys there to learn more about. Next up, now this is an interesting question. For me, as someone who also doesn't have a lot of experience, this sounds like one of these like little details. I'd be like, what do I do now with this? Do I need to empty my quarantine tank water after each quarantine period?
Ooh. Technically, you don't have to, but I recommend it. So the way I typically run quarantine, and this is why, because if you've treated with medication or anything like that, now you have to put carbon in to get that out. A lot of the time, the medications we use can mess with our filters, the biological, especially if you're using something that is antibiotic or is going to hurt bacteria. And what I find the easiest thing for me to do, and just to make sure that I'm never putting a fish in a tank where there could be anything left over from the last fish, or the last incident, is I'll shut the tank down, give it a really good rinse, make sure everything's clean, and then when I need quarantine again, I take water from my main system, set the tank up with that, and get the filter and everything running on the tank, and then do it that way. So I'm using water from my main system to do it, especially if a fish is coming out of there. So it just means I do a small water change on my main tank, and then I have the quarantine tank ready to go. So kind of dual purpose, but at least that way I know every time I set it up, I'm kind of starting from square one, and there shouldn't be anything going on in that system that could potentially mess up an already
no surprises
potentially ailing fish. Because once you have a fish that's sick and you're putting it in quarantine, you don't want to add anything else to an already immune compromised animal. It is not good. So if you're just talking about quarantining new fish before they go in the main system, if the last fish you put in had no issues at all, went through quarantine flawlessly, and you want to throw it in the tank and leave your quarantine system set up waiting for the next fish, nothing wrong with that.
Awesome. 10 gal planted tank, pH is 7.8. Is that too high? And can carbonated spring water when flat with a pH of 6.1 be used to lower pH? And what causes high pH? Thanks you.
Test your tap water. Find out where your tap water is. Things that can cause a high pH are things like calcium carbonate. So limestone. You could have rocks in the tank that have some sort of limestone content or calcium carbonate content in them that could buffer the water up. That's a potential. Your tap water could just have a slightly higher pH. If you have really hard tap water, you could have a pH that's going to hover a little bit higher up. I'm trying to think of what else might do it. That's like the most common things that will cause it. Either your water starts off that way from the top, or something in your tank is buffering the water. Will it hurt the plants? I mean, I don't find that 7.8. It's 7.8 is what they said, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty high, but it's not like through the roof. Once you hit 8 and start going north of that, that's pretty bad. Although I've never had my pH really mess plants up. I would be a lot happier if the pH is probably around 7, like neutral. I don't even think you have to go that low. But find out why your pH is high, because otherwise you're going to be in a constant battle with dropping the pH in the tank. If it's something in the tank buffering the pH, you can drop the pH, it'll go right back up. So pH up and down is like as products won't keep the pH stable. You can acidify the tank, and then it's just going to raise back up because, like I said, if there's something in there, it'll dissolve more of the calcium carbonate in that thing, and it'll just raise the pH back up to where it was. And if it's your tap water, you could probably treat it before it even goes in the tank, rather than trying to treat the tank for it going forward. And then you won't have a problem with the pH in the aquarium swinging up and then swinging down and swinging up and swinging down, because fish don't typically like that. So figure out where it's coming from first, and then we can find the solution. Because if the solution is taking the rocks you used out for your aquascape, then that might be your only solution. Because otherwise, like I said, it'll just go up and down. You can treat it and it'll just right back up.
I have CO2 in the tank. 2 of my fish died. I have a 120 liter tank with a filter that's for 200 liter and an air pump. Could the fish have died from the CO2 anyway? The other fish are healthy and active.
Probably not. What? I have lots of questions. Like, why?
I think Josh also addressed it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Let's see.
If fish are going to die from CO2 poisoning, you would see all of your fish suffering kind of simultaneously. There are fish that are obviously going to be more resilient in certain situations or less resilient in certain situations. So, I mean, it is technically possible that 2 fish out of all your fish were sensitive to the amount of CO2 that was in the water and kicked it, but it's unlikely. You would have seen everybody starting to gasp at the surface, everybody acting in a similar way, and then only 2 fish die. That's possible, but if you have taken corrective action to stop whatever was causing the fish to have that issue. So if your CO2 in your water was that high, you would have seen everybody reacting to it, not just 2 fish all of a sudden die. So I would say something else is at play. What is tough? Test water, contact our support team, give them all the details. Yeah. They can help you drill it down.
That's the best way
It's a conversation. It's not something I can just...
Yeah, and I see Josh interacting like they're chatting up a storm as well. So hopefully Josh has been able to address things in more detail. But if not, if you are still left wondering by the end of this, definitely contact support and they can help nail the issue down a little better.
Absolutely.
Can you guys talk about using saltwater lights on a freshwater tank?
Yeah, sure.
But we won't.
What do you want to know? You can do it. I've actually done it plenty of times. I'm going to say a lot of people who keep African cichlids will also use lighting that is technically meant for saltwater on a freshwater tank to give it the saltwater look and present the fish in a way that comes off more exotic. So it's done commonly. You can grow plants with a reef spec light. What I usually recommend is dialing the blues back a bit because you will be super high in vegetative growth because the blues in a reef light are very, 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 very strong. It'll also make your tank look really funny. So although the plants will probably grow just fine no matter what you're giving them in terms of a reef light or a freshwater planted light, reef lights tend to be extremely strong. And very heavy in the blue end of the spectrum. So you may just need to dial it back so you don't fry your plants. But more importantly, dialing the blues back will give you a more freshwater look. It looks very odd when you put reef lighting over plants because it's so blue. It's just corals glow, plants don't. Plants only glow if you throw UV light at them and they glow red. And it's like a dark, velvety, weird, purpley red.
Right.
But yeah, long story short, you can. I've actually grown bromeliads in a dart frog enclosure using a Radion Gen 3 Pro, and it went awesome. They were so colorful. Some plants got to get a lot of light to blush, like getting red coloration or purple coloration in the leaves, and bromeliads blush beautifully, but you got to pump up those photons. And sometimes a reef light's the easiest way to do that.
Fair enough. Can I keep Oscars with live plants?
Whew. I would not be surprised if they made a mess of them. I'd probably say I would advise against it just because I'd be afraid that they'd just start moving everything around and mess the plants up. And then it would be all for naught. If you are going to try some plants, try some inexpensive, easy plants like jungle valves and stuff. Near the back of the tank so they're not swimming through them and possibly pulling them out for fun. Or Anubias. Because even if they did pull them up, Anubias will be fine. They don't need to be rooted, so they don't care.
Cool. Do you have a preference on biological media? Does it change based on the size of the tank? What's your opinion on biomedia such as rings or matrix versus using volcanic rock or just sponges? Spongism.
So Ceramedia. Yeah, Ceramedia is awesome. That's Josh. So biological media really comes down to the surface area, the properties of the media itself. So the amount of surface area and also the way water moves through the media. And I don't just mean like through the media sitting in a basket. I actually also mean through the porous media. Because nutrients has to get delivered to the bacteria in that porous network. So you need a certain amount of flow going through the actual object the porous object in order for that bacteria to thrive. I will say the most basic stuff, like using, which some people have done and it can work, like dollar store scrubbies, like little dish scrubbies, as bioballs or just plain bioballs. Sure, they can work, but if you compare the surface area of a 5-gallon pail's worth of sponges versus a 5-gallon pail's worth of bioballs versus a 5-gallon pail's worth of Seachem matrix, you will find, or Ceramedia even, you will find that there is an astonishing amount more surface area because of the porosity of the actual media in something like Seachem matrix or in something like Ceramedia's media blocks by comparison to those little scrubbies or bioballs. Because of that surface area, they just hold way more bacteria and will be way more effective. Now, for the volume, you will have definitely spent the most money on that media, but here's the trick. You don't need as much of it. So when it comes to canister filters or hang-on filters or media reactors, when you want to fill those with something to be your biological media, it makes a lot more sense to spend more money on the media that's going to do the best job, but also you would have to spend a ton of money on bioballs to try to get the same surface area for the same amount of money you'd spend on the Seachem matrix or on the Ceramedia or on the EHEIM Substrat Pro, or pick your biological media that is a porous object. Volcanic rock, like some people like to use volcanic rock, like man, I'm blanking right now. The red stuff. Josh, help me out, buddy. I'm having a brain toot. Anyways, yes, you can use that as well. It can work as a biological media. EHEIM has something similar for their pond filters and stuff as a pond media. Lava rock. Haha! Volcanic, and I couldn't even figure that out.
You got there.
It was working in the background. I think you will find that using a media like Seachem matrix or similar medias, that you will have to use less of it again to get the same surface area. However, the volcanic rock is still vastly better than scrubbies or bioballs in this guy's opinion. You'll have to use less of it to achieve the same surface area. The other thing is the smaller medias, things like denitrate, will have different pore structures and networks inside of them that may help you achieve denitrification, which is anaerobic bacteria being able to process nitrates into nitrogen, which will inertly leave the system. You can't really accomplish that using bioballs or scrubbies. So, yeah. I think there's definitely a place for proper media, especially biological, since it's kind of the backbone of the system. But it's not impossible to run a tank off of things like bioballs or like older types of medias or scrubbies or whatever. Here's my big thing with scrubbies, and I'm going to warn everybody against this, especially the cheap ones you get from the dollar store. Yes, they can work, but you will break them down cleaning them. They do not last as long as they should. Just like, I don't know if you've ever tried to use them on dishes. They come apart pretty quick. Scrub a pan, it's over, right? So if you can imagine they're going to trap a lot of dirt, you're going to have to go in and clean them all. Then you're going to start finding that they break down because they're thin strips of plastic kind of, not the best option.
Pros and cons.
Yeah.
Is silica sand good for plants?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because I really prefer to use specific planted or substrate specific for plants to help with nutrient export, and I don't believe silica sand is going to do a very good job of nutrient delivery. And I also find most sands are going to compact, and some plants will have a hard time rooting in them properly. So I'm going to say no. I usually keep sand in a planted system as a decorative border around where I'm planting. So what I'll do is I'll get a planted substrate, put that in the areas where plants are going to be, use a partition of some kind, whether it's stone or rock or even just planted aquarium partitions or like little black strips, to try to separate the substrates and then pour the sand on top and around it so that the plants get to root in their planted substrate, but I have the look of sand in those other margined off areas, which is the way I think most aquascapers do it. You'll find, because plants just do so much better in a proper substrate for plants. Yes.
Best 50 to 100 liter filter you have used so far?
150 liters.
50 to 100 liter.
50 to 100 liters. 50 liters. Liters to gallons. What is it? 3 liters in a gallon? 50 divided by 3? Like 15 gallons? 15 to 30 gallons, I guess.
Sure.
What's in that range? I'm a massive fan of canister filters wherever I can use them. Although I will say I will use for tanks as small as 15 to 20 gallons. I know I'm not talking liters now, but that's because where we are, the industry is almost completely fixated on the imperial system rather than the metric system, even though I'm in Canada where we use metric. It's just I've been trained.
It's weird. My parents, they use Fahrenheit instead of Celsius all the time for the weather, and I don't understand why, but just the way it is, I guess.
Yeah,
it's very weird.
It depends on like the industries you're in. Sometimes you just get used to using whatever your work is. So my apologies that I'm not using liters, but 15 gallons to 20 gallons AquaClear hang-on filters do a great job. I think they are little workhorse filters. They do a really good job of being somewhere between a hang-on using a slip-in cartridge and a canister because of the way their body is made up. It's basically a nice, thick, open, rectangular space with a slide-in basket, and you can stack media in there, whether or not using AquaClear media or bags with something else. So I like that about them. They're kind of my happy median between using a canister filter and using a hang-on with a little slip-in cartridge. And I like the fact that I can dial the flow, and I love the fact that they're easy to service because the motors come right off.
That's the one. Is that the one you used in the?
That's the one I'm using on the plant tank. My next favorite filter for that size range would be an Eheim Classic canister, 2211, all the way up, depending on what you're keeping. 2211 all the way up to a 2215 if we're going as high as 30 gallons, depending on what you're keeping. But I think the 2213 will cover that entire range pretty comfortably regardless. So the Eheim Classics are fantastic filters. I've got one that's, I keep saying 20 years, but it's probably 23 years now, or 22 years. I'm not sure. It was one of the first filters I ever bought, and it's still going. So, no, it's probably about 20 years. Anyways, long story short, I've replaced the impeller and a shaft a few times over that time frame. And those are wear and tear parts, so you can expect to have to do that. But you can get parts for these filters. They do a really good job. They're super simplistic in design, so it's hard to get confused with how they work. They do lack some of the more user-friendly features, like having baskets inside of them. Although I will say the 2213 comes with a basket that the entire selection of media goes into. So you can at least take that out and service that. But it's not partitioned off. So it's just the sponges that separate things. So they can be just a mild amount more involved to clean the media up in. But beyond that, they will not die. In my experience. You take care of them and they just go and go and go and go, which I'm really happy with. Also, Eheim tailors the flow, the amount of flow that goes through their filter directly to the biological function of the filter. So it may be slower than most canister filters that claim to do the same size aquariums. However, the flow is really tuned to make sure that the biological media is able to do its job as best as possible.
Cool. I've linked the different filters Thomas was mentioning. I've linked those in the chat so you guys can check them out, learn more about them. Next question is, how many freshwater shrimp can you have in a 20-gallon?
Like a billion.
All right.
Lots. And here's why I say that. Because you could start with 15 or 20 cherry shrimp or something, and you keep them happy, that's going to turn into like 500 cherry shrimp. They breed. They breed and they're happy. They're happy and they breed. But there lots. You will find many. I bet you Matthew at the office has a shrimp tank, and I think he started off with like maybe a dozen shrimp in there. And before I had moved out here, there was like 50, 60 shrimp. They just keep going. They have fun. Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
And Matthew's Matthew's one of our support guys at the office. Yeah, so if you do email in, you'll be talking to him. Another one of our aquatics enthusiasts who
he's excellent as well. He knows his stuff.
Absolutely. Next up, what's a good companion fish for a pleco?
Another pleco. No, I'm just kidding. Plecos can, believe it or not, be pretty territorial with each other, depending on what type of pleco it is and if you even have enough space. Common plecos get massive. I would say just like any other fish. I think something that is important to consider is that most fish don't really care if they have friends. Like, I know that sounds odd, maybe cold even, but schooling fish love to be around other fish. Otherwise, there are tons of species that would get actually more stressed out by having another one of themselves in the tank than they would benefit from it because they're territorial. And that could cause a situation where fish are constantly competing for the same spot, and that can cause more harm than good. Not always, but it can.
You can just stress them out.
Yeah, so if you have, like, for instance, if I've got two ancestral plecos, they're usually pretty good about being in tanks with each other, especially if they're raised together. But if you have a male and a female, no problem. They're going to love that setup. They're going to love that situation. They'll probably even breed eventually. But if you have two males or two females and they're not getting along and they are starting to get territorial, then you've just got two fish who are going to get stressed out with each other. So I would say focus on other things. Put other things in the tank that you like. Keep the tank a little bit busier. Other fish in the tank can act as dither fish, and in that way make a fish that's more prone to hiding or being stressed in situations where they're in an open space, let's say, less uncomfortable by seeing that, oh, there's other fish out and about. That probably means other small fish. Probably means there's no predators. I'm probably okay right now. I'll be comfortable doing what I'm going to do. Right. So in that way, you might be able to see your pleco a little bit more just because there are other fish in the tank that are making it more comfortable. But if you already have that kind of situation going on and you're just trying to, do something nice for your pleco, I would just not worry so much about it. As long as you got other fish in that tank and everybody's happy and healthy and eating, you're gold.
Cool. Do you think using a blue light during the night is bad compared to no light at all?
If you've got, I think I touched on this before, if you've got like your light fixture has a couple of 1/4 watt or 1/2 watt LEDs in it that come on at night just so you can see into the tank just barely, there is no harm at all in having those on. In fact, having those there can help the fish see a little bit, which when you turn that other light on in the morning so you can see your fish, or whenever you turn it on, if the room's really dark, the fish are less startled because they could already see. It wasn't like darkness to light. So it can have that benefit. If it's any more than that, like you've got a reef light and you're leaving your actinics on that reef light at 50% all night long, for corals, let's say, or plants, they could photosynthesize with that, and that's almost like the sun never going away. So that could be detrimental. It'll also mess up the circadian rhythm of the fish. The fish technically might have enough light that they're like, I'm not sure if it's day or night anymore, and that can mess up their circadian rhythm. So as long as it's just barely lit moonlight, it's meant to do that, no problem at all. I wouldn't worry about it. If it's more than that, like you're just leaving the actinic part of your light on all night long, that could be an issue.
Cool. We're already coming up on an hour. How you doing? How you doing for time?
I'm good.
We could, couple extra minutes?
Yeah. Let's do our fire round or whatever and all.
All right. Before you want to do lightning round?
We'll do it after fire, lightning.
Well, no, we'll do it. I'll ask you one more question to lead us into lightning round.
Okay, sure.
This one you should like. Hi, my question is: if Thomas could keep any Pokemon as an aquarium pet, which Pokemon would he choose?
Wow! Oh, that's a good question.
That got him jazzed up.
I don't even have a good answer for that. You know what? I was around for the original 150 for red and blue, so I'm gonna pick something from there, just because I don't want to sully it with the other 5,000 Pokemon that exist now. So, and it honestly just makes it a lot easier for me. Wait a minute. I got more to keep as a pet.
Yeah, in an aquarium.
In an aquarium. I'm going to assume I have unlimited money. Gyarados. You can't like a Gyarados and then like a school of Magikarp that wish they were that Gyarados.
Yeah, we have someone saying Magikarp. Josh said Bulbasaur.
Bulbasaur is my favorite starter. Josh isn't wrong. He's my favorite starter. But Goldeen, Sea King, like see if it were me.
Squirtle.
Yeah, or Starmie, Staryu. Oh, who else? Oh, Cloyster. A
Snorlax. Cloyster. That's a good. Yeah.
Cloyster. Yeah. Cloyster was one of my favorite Pokemon for the longest time. I would have to set up like a tank big enough where I could keep like a little bit of everything. A community tank of water Pokemon. Yeah. I am starting a water Pokemon gym. And I'm just going to have a swimming pool and put all of them in that. I would have to be Misty. I would have to kick her out of her own gym and take it over.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad we had this chat.
That was a lot of fun.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Next up, we'll start the lightning round now. On that note, lightning round. What is the smallest tank a pair of clowns and an anemone can live in?
20 gallons.
20 gal. Next up, this is not so lightning if I'm not quicker, but there's all these Pokemon answers. How do I fix bladder disease in mollies?
Yikes.
Email support.
Yeah.
Okay. Seriously, email support.
Yeah, email support.
They'll give you a better answer than we could, I guess, in this.
We got to get into too many things. I can't do that in a lightning.
Is bare bottom tank good?
Can be.
That was quick. All right, cool.
It can be. So a bare bottom tank has the benefit of you being able to see all the waste that's in the tank. It's very easy to siphon it all out because it's right there on the top. If you have a reef system, let's say having the tank bare bottom means you can have higher flow without worrying about disturbing the sand bed. It also means you don't have to clean the sand bed because it won't be trapping debris. And often what happens if you have pumps blowing on the bottom of the aquarium, so like from the back to the front on the bottom, you'll end up with these neat little piles of debris where you've got like a little kind of swirl of water on the bottom of the tank. So you're going to have piles that you just have to suck out instead of having to go around everything and try to find it. So bare bottom tanks can be great. The downside is, you see the bottom. Okay.
When I use CO2, I had to turn on an air stone at night or my fish would be gasping for air in the morning.
You need to put your CO2 on a solenoid so that it shuts off at night. So what you do is you set up a timer, get a solenoid valve, run it in line with the CO2 tubing, and then at night, the timer would go off, shut the valve, and then you stop dosing CO2 at night. Just like I talked about earlier that you can run an air pump at night for your planted tank because they kind of do the reverse at night. Mm-hmm. You just have to shut the CO2 off and you won't have that problem. Fighting CO2 with gas exchange is just wasting CO2.
Okay, cool.
So shut it off, solenoid valve.
Awesome. Can a mantis shrimp have a tank mate, and how would you clean their tank without stressing the creature?
I'm going to say not easily. They will eat a lot of different things. Crustaceans, probably fish. Depends on the mantis and the size. I wouldn't keep them with anything. There's no point. They're just going to eat everything else. The easiest way to not stress them out during tank maintenance is let them shuffle down into their tube of glory or whatever thing you've stuck in there for them to go into and hide their little home. PVC tubes with a rock in front of it that has a hole cut in it works awesome. And you can cap the back of the tube and just kind of stick it in the dirt. You just shepherd them into that. They're honestly not very skittish critters. And then you can just clean the tank. And they'll come out when they're good and ready.
Sweet. Do fancy goldfish require a heater?
As long as when I keep fancy goldfish, I like to keep them at closer to tropical temperatures. It requires more maintenance, but I find they grow better, they grow faster, they have better appetites, and so if you're going to do it the way I like to do it, I would keep them around 74, 76, and then yes, typically you'd need a heater. However, you don't have to give them a heater. You can run them a little bit cooler. It just means that as your house gets colder and colder, if you allow it to get into the low 60s, you might want to make sure you're feeding a food that is easier to digest because they will have a slower metabolism. So like wheat germ and stuff, potentially.
Cool. What kind of sand would you recommend for an axolotl tank? I have bare bottom right now, but would like to add some sand for more beneficial bacteria to grow on.
My favorite sand, although I've never used it with axolotls, is Sunset Gold from Carib Sea. I love the color of it. They do have other ones like Crystal, what the heck did they call it? Crystal River? Carib Sea has a few sands. Because I'm not super well versed in axolotls, I know that it's best that you have smooth surfaces for them. The only sand I can think of that I know for certain is very coarse is the black sand. It is very coarse, but the Sunset Gold is not.
Great. Okay, let's see if I can. I lost my place. Yay! What's the best food for my cichlids?
There's a mixed diet of cichlid foods, and it depends on where your cichlids are from. They're usually categorized by area, and also if you're keeping cichlids that are herbivorous, vegetarians, make sure you stick to a vegetarian diet for them because you do not want to mess them up by giving them animal protein. It's not good for their system. But if they are omnivorous, then pick a cichlid food. I think Hikari is great. Tropical, again, fantastic line of foods. I really like their soft foods. I actually used theirs for my South American cichlids, and I was super impressed. Blown away even.
Cool. Should I dose calcium in a shrimp tank?
I don't know. I don't know. Not unless you're testing for calcium and you're low on calcium. Don't if you can avoid it, never blind dose anything. Always test first.
Cool. Let me see. Where are we? What fish don't need a filter?
Next question.
Okay.
Yeah, you should always have filtration on the tank and water circulation. There is no fish that really thrives, keyword, in a situation where they've got still water and no way for waste to be removed. So, in my opinion, no fish should be in a tank with no filter. Next,
can I add crebensis with guppies and mollies?
If it's just one, you can give it a shot. If you get a pair of crebensis and they breed, you can rest assured the rest of those fish will end up tucked away in one corner of the tank. I like cribs a lot, and I've kept them in community situations, and it's gone well. But just one crib, because two cribs is two cribs too many if they start making babies.
Fair enough. Next question. They asked this in all caps, so I'll ask you in all caps. What do you think about feeding only flake food to my omnivore tropical fish?
It's not a terrible idea, as long as you're using multiple flake foods that are of a high quality and have different nutritional benefits. No one flake food or staple food. Like, here's the thing, and you'll notice there are different prices for different kinds of foods you can get. So you can get like brine shrimp flake food, or bloodworm flake food, or earthworm flake food, or flake food for color enhancing, or flake food for this species and that species. And then there's tropical flake food. Your tropical flake food is your basic, everyday, here's a pinch of this, staple diet. However, you should always be feeding something else on top of that to help your fish, right? Because that's just a basic diet. You want to supplement other things. Grab some of those other flake foods. Grab a color enhancer. Grab something that's spirulina heavy. Grab something with some garlic in it. Grab something that has a high content of pick an animal that fish like to eat. Like I said, earthworms, daphnia, bloodworms, brine shrimp. And then always add a little bit of that in whenever you're feeding. Do 2 days of staple food, then something else, or if you feed multiple times a day, staple in the morning, this in the evening, mix it up, and your fish will be a lot happier, healthier. They should live longer lives and show better coloration for you.
Cool. How many fancy goldfish in an 80-gallon?
Man, if we're talking adults, like 6. I know it's not a lot of fish, but if we're talking like full-sized adult fancy goldfish, you don't want to pack them in there too tightly. It's a lot easier to care for them if you don't do that. They're messy.
Cool. I've got poorly growing Java fern, almost no growth at all. My Anubias grows like crazy. Is there a nutrient that could be lacking?
It's possible. Anubias is very, very easy to grow. Slow grower, but easy to grow. If your Java fern is not growing, I would wonder if it's looking ratty. Like what does it look like? Send our support a picture of the plants, because we'd have to take a look. Typically, if you're not getting outstanding growth for a long period of time, the plant will start to like degrade a bit, unless it's Anubias. Never. They take forever to look bad. They just look good all the time. But yeah, we'd have to see where it's at. You're getting yellowing the leaves. You're getting a lot of leaf die-off. You're getting no spread. Are you getting algae on the leaves? What's going on?
A lot of variables there.
Yeah.
Okay, so email support@bigowlspets.com with pictures, and they'll follow up with you. So we're going to wrap up quickly. Maybe 3 more questions. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay, what is a good algae eater to keep with cichlids? Mine have killed the pleco I added. Any suggestions?
Oh, that's a toughie. I would look at nerite snails. They're going to leave them alone for sure. Cichlid tanks have higher pHs, so nerite snails shouldn't get pitting in their shells, which can happen in low pH situations. Like planet tanks, people use them in a lot, but sometimes they get pitting in the shell from it, which is their shell not being able to grow properly, essentially. So I would try nerite snails, something that the fish are, I would not try another fish. If your cichlids are being aggressive towards things like plecos, then any other algae-eating fish I can think of is going to be higher on the hit list than a pleco was. So I'd try snails next.
Cool. Is there some way to prevent live bearers from, live bearing?
Yeah. Keep all males or all females. And I would say all males is probably safer because you could get females from the store that are already knocked up. And then you're going to have babies you didn't want to begin with anyways.
Yeah.
All males. That's like, you got to keep them separate. That's the only way really to do it.
All right.
Otherwise, they just make babies. They're on autopilot.
Fair enough. We'll ask one more question, but before we get to that question, I just want to say to everyone, thank you, as always, for joining us on these live Q&As. It's always a pleasure hearing all the questions and having you guys get to talk with Thomas one-on-one.
You guys keep me on my toes.
Yeah. It's a fun time, eh?
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Different than, we usually script it and do like 12 takes or, how many takes we have to do, and we can kind of perfect it. This, I really enjoy this.
Buddy makes me sound like a professional.
He does it professionally 12 different times. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's tons of fun. I love it.
Yeah.
It can be tough at times. You guys ask some really tough questions sometimes, and for me, one of the harder parts, I guess, is just not being able to give you a full answer because it's something I need to ask you questions about in order to get the answer drilled out. So. Yeah.
But again, all of our thanks go to you guys for supporting us. Speaking of supporting us, the more you spread the word about our channel, the better everyone will be. We will be able to bring you more content. You guys will be able to enjoy much more content. So any chance you get, tell your family, your friends, everyone about our channel.
Your local fish club.
Your
forums.
Really spread the word, Reddit, forums, wherever. The more you spread the word about us and our videos, the better it'll be for all of us. Also,
as we grow, we just get to do more and more cool stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So, and again, we thank you guys all for supporting us up to this point. And we just want to keep growing. So please, share it with the world. Scream it from the rooftops.
If you have access to a roof and can tether yourself safely.
Might make you look a little crazy, but we will appreciate it anyway. And again, if you want to support us, the best way to do that is to shop with us, whether that's in-store, online. We do appreciate that as well, because again, that'll enable us to do more and more awesome videos that we love doing and that hopefully you guys love watching.
Yeah.
And with all that said, we'll ask you one final question, and then we'll wrap this up. Can you keep a betta in a tank with only non-plant decorations? I have driftwood and rocks, only with one male betta in a 5-gallon tank.
As long as there are no sharp surfaces that your male betta is likely to snag and or tear his fins on, sky's the limit.
Awesome. Short and simple. Okay, well, that's it for us. Thank you, as always, everybody, and
keep on tanking.